Hey, everybody, welcome to Fabulous Women Over 40. Today I have an amazing guest. Her name is Gordana Biernat. She's the author of the Know the Truth book and one of Oprah's Soul 100 teachers. Welcome, Gordana.
Hi, Kara. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. It's so nice to be with
I'm
you.
so happy that you were able to be with me. We've had
Yes.
a very interesting journey over the past year, right? It's been a year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It's been a year. Absolutely.
Yes,
Yes.
so I've enjoyed working with you, and I just really wanted to have everybody else in the world who wasn't aware of you share you with the world. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm.
just to start, I wanted to ask you: were you born and raised in Sweden?
Yes. Well, I was born in Sweden, and then my parents decided that they wanted to send me to former Yugoslavia, where they came from. They came from the Balkans in the mid 60s,
Mm-hmm.
1965. They came to Sweden. So they decided that there was no room for me in their life. So
Oh,
they asked my aunt to take care of me, and she did that until I was 6 years old, and that was in former Yugoslavia. So I was actually raised by my aunt. I wasn't raised
interesting.
by my mother and my father.
Okay.
And then at the age of 6, they brought me back to Sweden, and I did not know my own parents at that time. I mean, I knew that there were people somewhere in Sweden that I should be calling mom and dad, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know them actually. They just came to visit
Mm-hmm.
from time to time. And then they brought me here. And it was a hard time for me because they were different than my aunt. They were not as open, not as understanding. And I had a tough time after that until I moved away from home when I was 19 years
Mm-hmm.
old. So I would say that I've always lived in two
Mm-hmm.
cultures, one coming from the Balkans, where family is everything, and then one from Scandinavia, Sweden, where the individual is everything. So I've always been balanced between the two ways of looking at reality from individual perspective and from family perspective. And I've been able to harness the best of both
Mm-hmm.
cultures. Most people don't know how to manage that, so it becomes a burden. But for me, it's become an opening to see life in a different way, to look at life as joys everywhere. You can pick from any culture, the both cultures. I could pick whatever I needed in order to be present and enjoy life. I didn't have to see it as a burden. I
Right.
saw it as an illuminated way of living.
Well, I love that because most people do not have that perspective, let us
I
say.
know.
So I think that that was
Yeah.
such an amazing thing for you to have, even though initially
Mm.
at 6, that must have been, or up to 6, must have been
Mm.
traumatic in a sense.
Yeah, it was traumatic to come back.
Mm,
It wasn't so traumatic for me to live with my aunt because she was a strong woman. She
nice.
knew exactly what she wanted in life. She had two daughters, and I was there too. So I was brought up among women, and they were strong, all of them. So I
Mm,
felt like uh, I didn't. I don't see myself as a victim. I'm almost grateful that my mother agreed to leave me there when I was 4 months old because my
mm,
mother was not a strong woman. She was
okay.
very dominated by my father. So I had already um, I had already seen a different pattern for a woman. When I look at my aunt, I could see this strong woman managing everything in her life. Her husband died when her children were small and she never
Mm,
remarried. So she could manage anything in her life.
right.
And looking at my own mother, she was so dominated by my father. So for a long time, I felt like I couldn't connect to my mother because
Mm,
I judged her for being or for allowing herself to be dominated by my father. And this is
understood.
also the reason why I was living in troublesome reality because my father did not like women who wouldn't submit to his ideas of
Mm.
what reality is and how women should live in this reality. So I was always in a place where I couldn't speak my truth, because if
Mm-hmm.
I spoke my truth, then he would unleash hell for everyone in the family. So I had to silence myself.
Right.
That was, I mean, between 6 years old and 19, I literally could not speak my truth.
Mm. Wow. And that makes so much sense why we connected, because we have a similar, definitely
Yes,
similar
yes,
background with the
yes,
dads
yes.
there and the
Yeah.
mom for sure. Wow.
Mhm.
So, how do you think, looking back on that, how, I mean, you've already explained how it benefited you, but do you feel like
Mm.
in any way was that, did that catapult you to be the adult now that you are the adult woman, in the sense that you know,
Mm.
who has that balance for the, you know, the strongness and the independence with the family too?
Absolutely. Is anything, everything that happens in our past is there for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always a beneficial reason. So it's my job as a grown up to look back at my past and see, okay, this was painful. Why did I experience this? And how can I harvest it? How can I pick the golden nuggets from that and use it in my life to perpetuate myself into the future that I want to create for myself?
Mm-hmm.
And this is not something that I knew when I was 20.
Right.
Absolutely not. I was in victimhood for such a long time in
Mm-hmm.
my own mind. I was thinking that it's not allowed for me to say what I need to say. I need to adapt myself to the circumstances. And it made me smaller than I actually was.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think giving birth to my son when I was 31 changed everything for me.
Mm-hmm.
It changed my way of looking at myself. It actually focused me into becoming more authentic, because if I am not authentic, then he cannot be authentic. So I needed to find, who is authentic Gordana? Who is this person? Who is this person? You know, the stillness from within looking outside. Who is that? Not trying to fit in, not trying to please, not trying to be something
Right.
in order to be seen, just being. And this child of mine focused me into this authenticity within me. And that put me on a journey to, you know, go within, start looking at, how am I creating this reality?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of power do I have in this reality? Is it what they tell me, or is it what I feel inside?
Right.
So it did catapult me into this kind of thinking. Without my past, I would not be able to do what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
today. With that being said, I mean, it wasn't pleasant.
Right.
Sometimes the pain actually puts you on a path where you grow, but you don't feel it in the now moment. In your past, as a child, you can't feel it because you're in the hands of someone that is dictating your future.
Right.
But retrospectively, when I look back at it, I know that it's an integral part of who I am today, without a doubt.
Right. So, if I'm understanding right, it would seem like you were tapped into your intuitiveness early, and then you
Yeah.
kind of, not, I wouldn't say lost it, but then we're sort of, it kind of got ripped away in a sense with what was going on with your
Mm-hmm.
dad, but then it was
Mm-hmm.
reinvigorated or reawakened when you had your son. So, but without it
Mm-hmm.
having happened early on, do you think that that would, you would have had been started on that journey and already had a good, you know, foundation in a sense? Or
Mm-hmm.
because for somebody who didn't have that, maybe they just had trauma happen to them early but didn't have
Mm-hmm.
the strength foundation, how could you
Mm-hmm.
suggest people can get through that? Because I know a lot of people that are just like, oh, my whole life I've been a victim and this happened to me, and you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and they
Yeah.
don't get it,
Yeah.
and they don't know how to get past it.
Mm. I think that as children who are living in abusive families, we are ego triggered.
Hmm.
And when ego is triggered, it will never show you the truth about reality. So if
True.
you stay for a very long time in this ego triggered place, you might forget how it feels not to be ego triggered.
Mm.
And I had an aha moment when I read something. I don't even remember where I read it, but I was in an argument with my husband,
Mm.
and I felt so victimized by this. And now my husband is not at all abusive,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt victimized. And I was thinking, here I am all alone. Nobody loves me. And this was before my son was born. I think I was in my 20 something, 8,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I was sitting on the floor and I opened a book in psychology because I've always been interested in psychology and metaphysical stuff and quantum physics and all these kind of things that I couldn't understand or grasp,
Right.
or that were a little bit complicated for me. So anyway, I was looking in this book, and I don't remember what book it is, but it doesn't matter. And there was one sentence that said, "You create your own reality.
Mm.
You teach people how to treat you."
Correct.
And I was thinking, what does that mean? I'm a victim here. How can I be creating my own reality? And how can I teach someone something when I'm the victim?
Right.
And slowly I grasped that. I understood that I am not in a powerful position when I see myself as a victim. Even if I feel like this is the truth,
Mm-hmm.
it can never be the truth.
Right.
There must be something else there. So it started kind of, like small whispers, but I feel like it's been there my entire
Mm-hmm.
life. As a child, I could have thoughts about this reality. I could think about the universe and wonder, where does it end? What happens outside of the universe? Who are we? Those kind of thoughts were always there. So I was finding what I was looking
Right.
for because I was already on that path. But people, I think everyone is looking for who they
Mm-hmm.
are. They just need to sacrifice parts of their ego
Right.
when they feel that they're victims, and seeing that as the truth,
Mm-hmm.
even if the outer circumstances are showing you this is the truth, you are a victim. If you're a grown up, you always have the power to change your own life. As a child, you don't have that power.
Right.
You can't change your own life. But as a grown up, you can change your own life. And victimhood is not the only alternative.
Mm-hmm.
To grasp that there is a choice, either you stay a victim or you change something. And it's easier to stay a victim. And I know that this is really tough to listen to, but it's easier to stay a victim because it's a known path.
Mm-hmm.
You've been practicing it for such a long time that you don't even think
Right.
about changing it.
Yeah. It's a natural thing, really, for some
Yeah, it
people.
by default you just go into it.
Yeah. So when you're looking
Mm.
back on your whole life now, and how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I'm 56
And you look
right now.
not a day over 30. I was just saying.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
um,
I think age is just a number. I do not understand it. It's much more important what I do with my time than how much time I've lived.
right. Well, I mean, in age in its sense, people say that age is just a number, but it does represent, hopefully, some wisdom that
Mm.
we've gained. I mean, that's
Oh,
the
yes.
and the
Oh,
longer you
yes. Oh,
lived,
yes.
if you're evolving and
Hmm.
you're conscious, then hopefully
Hmm.
you're aging well in your wisdom because it's not, if you're
Yes.
50, let's say 60 years old, and you still have the emotional mentality of somebody who's 20, then maybe you haven't
Hmm.
done well with your time. Let's just say. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
Yes, yes, yes. I do. I do. I would probably say that you've spent most of your time in the negative side of your
mhm,
ego, which is either catapulting you back into your
right.
past, bringing up stuff
Mhm.
so that it will be fed by you in the now moment,
Mm,
the drama that it is creating from the
right.
past, or it is projecting you into the future with all the bad things that can happen to you because this happened to you in the past.
Right.
So it never allows you to be present in the now moment. The more time you spend in the now moment, the
Mhm.
more connected you are to eternity, which actually slows down your aging.
Love that.
When you spend time in the now moment, when you are present and enjoying what you're seeing in your reality, it connects you to eternity because you are now, and now is always.
Right.
It's the, back and forth, back to your past, into your future. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't go back in our past and look at
Right.
it. It's the mindless dwelling. It's the allowing emotions from the past to drive you in the now moment without looking at them and asking, is this true for me now? Where I am in this room, is this true for me?
Right.
So living in the now moment will actually slow down your aging.
I love that. Maybe that's why we
I
all
know,
look so young.
I do. Yes.
Because if you spend,
because we are now.
You spend so much time in the worrying about stuff in the future, then you're worried, right? It's just worry. It's on something that hasn't even happened yet. And then if you're always constantly focused on the past, then it's just about regrets. So you waste your present worrying, regretting, and not living, right? You're not living in the present if you're looking too far back or spending too much time worrying about what may or may not happen.
Yeah, this is how ego steals your time. This is how ego steals your presence in the now moment. This is how life is stolen from you when you're not present in the now moment, when you allow the ego to tell you what you want to focus on, or not even what you have to focus on. So going back, dealing with it, and then allowing it to be what it is, a memory in the past that will not give you your emotional fix in the now moment.
Right.
And it takes some time, but it doesn't have to take a long time to do that. It doesn't. I think it's the stories that we keep telling ourselves that, oh, I'll have to sit in psychotherapy for 10 years before I can release myself from it. It's not. I don't think that is the truth. I think that when you really want to release yourself from something, you will find the way to do it in the now moment and then release. Unless you are, tricked by the ego to dwell in it for longer periods of time. It's a question of having an intention. When you go back in time and look at your past, having an intention to actually change it. I know that people say, well, the past is written in stone. You can't change stuff. Yes, you can. You can't change the facts, the people that were there, the place, the time. You can't change that, but you can change your perspective, because if you go back in the past and you know that you are whole here and now, that there is nothing lacking, nothing missing, you are exactly the way you're supposed to be. You can go back in the past and you can look at it from a different perspective and change the emotion that is embedded in it. Not lying to yourself, but seeing the strength. Seeing who you were at that time. For me, it was like when I was a victim in my 20s and almost 30s, looking back at myself always made me feel sorry for myself. It made me feel my victimhood. And I didn't want to go back because I didn't want to stay in that. It was painful. And then I had a breakthrough moment where I went back and I looked and I thought, wait, I'll stay in this memory and look a little bit further. And I could see what I did. I could see myself answering. I could see how I soothed myself. I could see what I did to save myself. And that's a strength when you can see that this is a 4-year-old doing this. And that's me. I can see that I am strong already there. So finding my strength when I think that I'm weak, when I go back in time.
And you do it for like a whirlwind tour, not not a staycation, right?
Yes.
I think that's where people get stuck, is they're just like, they keep repeating it because they haven't accepted it or come to terms with what it was, and they're stuck in the emotion of how painful it was versus just looking at it like as if you were a time traveler, right? And seeing what happened and not the story
Yes.
that you made around what happened, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. The thing why we get stuck in this is because the emotional fix is addictive.
Mm,
So when you go back, you feel the pain, and then you do it again and again and again, and you become the victim, and then you go again and again, and it releases you from the responsibility of taking care of it,
right.
and it gives you an emotional fix when you do that. So it becomes addictive. You have to sacrifice a part of your ego when you go back and say, okay, I really do want to solve this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go back there, and I do not want to be a victim anymore.
Right.
I wasn't a victim. You, the way I see it, or the way I see my own past is I was a victim as a
Mm-hmm.
child, but I am not a victim
Right.
now. In my grown up state of being, I can choose. I can choose my mind, or I can choose my state of consciousness. I can choose that.
Right.
There is a
Mm-hmm.
choice always. Just recognizing the choice gives you a lot of power. Recognizing that I don't have to feel that pain. It's in my
Mm-hmm.
past. It's a memory.
Right.
So I can go back and look without feeling the
Mm-hmm.
pain. Is as it's like you said, to see it almost like time traveling and hovering
Mm-hmm.
over the timeline where this happened and being there, going back and seeing the child, because the child will always find a way to survive, and that is the
Mm-hmm.
strength.
Yeah, because I think what happens a lot of times is people are like, I don't ever want to feel like that again. So when they get triggered
Mhm.
in the present moment, they're not connecting that it was from something in the past that they hadn't reconciled or dealt with or
Mhm.
healed or whatever you want to call it. So now
Mhm.
they're like blaming whatever person, issue, whatever happens now
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
saying, when that really showed up to help you recognize that that
Yes.
still needed to be healed. Everything happens for you, right? Not to you. You're not a victim.
Yes.
Even when it happened to you as a child, there was a reason, that it happened so that
Mhm.
going forward, however, it was meant to do something for
Mhm.
you in your future, I would assume. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm not God, clearly.
No, yeah,
But
no, exactly. No one has all the answers, but it's a question of finding the benefits in it.
mhm, right.
And of course, when you've had a horrible childhood, I got angry when people told me, well, you need to go back and find the benefits in this. And I go, what benefits?
Right.
It was horrific. Why would I? There is no
Mhm.
benefits, or there are no benefits. But doing it
Mhm.
seriously with the intention of solving something for myself, I did see the benefits.
Right.
And the minute you see the gold in
Mhm.
it stops bugging you.
Yeah.
It doesn't come back, it doesn't come up
Mm.
again. You can look at it and say, well, my father was crazy. And you don't feel anything when you say it.
Right. If there's still emotion
I
attached to it, that there's something there you haven't dealt with.
Yes, if it triggers you into being angry or crying or feeling like, oh my God, how could this happen to
Mm.
me? Or there is no God, otherwise I wouldn't have been there. It takes some wisdom
Mhm.
to do so. And I think that sometimes it takes some time. And I think for me, it was literally after my 30s when I started doing these things, going back in time. And it's easier when the abuser no longer lives. So my father passed away a couple of years ago, which made it much more easier for me
Mm.
to go back and actually see the things that were painful for me to look at, or look at him without feeling anger, frustration,
Mm.
judgment. Because you see, when I look at him and I am vibrating in judgment, frustration, and
Right.
anger, it doesn't make any difference for
No.
him, but it makes a difference for me in my now
Right.
moment. And every time I thought about him, there I was vibrating on that
Mm.
frequency.
Mhm.
So realizing that, I think most of us need to realize that our parents are not
Mhm.
perfect. Our parents do not know everything. Our parents sometimes never grow up. They never go into healing themselves.
Exactly.
Some parents stay wounded their entire
Mm-hmm.
life. And as a child or as a grown up now, being able to grow in my consciousness, I would look at them and say, how could they? Being judgmental, because why don't they understand that they need to expand in their consciousness? Otherwise, they're hurting their children. Well, they
Right.
didn't. They weren't as wise or mature or done with themselves at all.
Mm-hmm.
So if I spend the rest of my life judging
Mm-hmm.
them, wanting them to be different than they were, I lose my
Right.
life.
Yeah.
So there is a choice to be made. You can either look at it and say, okay, so my father was crazy and my mother was even crazier because she stayed with him and that's it.
Right. And that's what it
Or
was.
you can look, yes, or you can look at it from a higher perspective and say, okay, so there was something wrong with
Mm.
them. In my father's case, there was some psychological thing, but at that time, nobody spoke about it, not as we do today, because it's more
Right.
open. Mental health is more
Mm-hmm.
important. It wasn't in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Nobody talked about mental
Right.
health. So we assumed that everything was okay with him and we treated him as if everything was
Mm-hmm.
okay, but it
Right.
wasn't. So if he would have gotten the help he needed, he could have changed, but he
Right.
didn't get that. So if I, in my, 40s, sit there and blame my father for not taking care of himself, I lose my life.
Yeah. It's not a benefit to you.
Be- no, and he couldn't. There was, I'm not, making up excuses for him. But if I look at it from a high perspective, I can see that, okay, he couldn't do better
Mm-hmm.
than he did.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point in me going back there and looking for stuff to, feel bad about? It doesn't help me at all
No.
in my now
It keeps
moment.
you in your victimhood, right?
Yes, and him as a perpetrator in my mind for the rest of my life,
Mm.
and I don't want to do that.
Right.
I've even gone so far, Kara, to since he passed away. Sometimes when I think about him and I think, oh my God, he was such a horrible father, I'm actually, from a spiritual perspective, I am keeping him prisoner in time and
Mm.
space where he was playing the role of a bad
Right.
father. He's not there
Mm.
anymore
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't affect me anymore. So why would I keep him
Right.
in this prison in my mind where I
Yeah.
can release the energetic bonds and say, you are free? That is what atonement actually is
Mm.
about, to release myself from those thoughts that are an illusion anyway, because he's not here
Right.
anymore. The time has passed. It doesn't exist anymore. So why would I keep it there unless my ego wants to have a place where it will pull me back into victim mode and get its fix?
Right.
So if I don't want that, I can look at it and I can say, okay, I need to release him. Otherwise, I become the perpetrator in my own
Right.
mind, keeping him prisoner
Right.
and using that as an excuse to feel victimized in the now moment.
Mm.
I know it sounds provoking, but that is
No,
how I
it's
feel about it.
true.
It's
Yeah. It
easier.
makes you the
Yeah.
bully almost at one level, right?
Yes, because I am allowing it to become a part of the frequency or my consciousness or my state of
Mm-hmm.
consciousness to become a part of me, like a part of my DNA. And it doesn't have to, because there is a choice. I can allow it to dissolve
Right.
and release his spirit in this from these chains in the physical world.
Right. So what advice would you give someone whose parent or perpetrator or whoever that might be is still
Hmm.
living? How can they have
Hmm.
peace, or move past that victimhood of like, well, this happened and this person did this to me and I can't forgive them and
Hmm.
all of that. Like
Hmm.
how do and not understanding that you do have a choice, that the forgiveness
Hmm.
doesn't absolve the person from what they did, but it frees you from being the bully in the sense of like keep poking
Yes.
the bear, when you don't have to.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, I can speak from my own experience was that when I met my husband, I was 19 years old,
Mm,
and coming from a culture where women marry, they do not move away from home, they marry.
mm,
I didn't marry, I just moved out.
mm.
And my father said, you know what? This is the end. So when neighbors asked him, where is Gordana? He would say, she's died.
Oh,
She
God,
doesn't live any longer.
Jesus.
So, and that went on for 8 years. So he didn't allow me to go home and visit my mother and my two brothers because I was
Oh,
dead.
wow.
I crossed his mind, or I crossed his cultural heritage. I made a fool out of him by moving away, not
Oh,
marrying.
goodness.
This is crazy, but that's how it was. Why am I telling this? Because he did this for 8 years, which meant that I didn't have any contact with him for eight
Wow.
years. And that was a blessing to me.
Mm,
It was beautiful because I could connect to who I was without being poked by him all the
right.
time, without being forced to answer his frequency. I could
Mm,
detach from
mm-hmm.
it for such a long time until I found who I was
Right.
within. And when I did that, I could meet him, but it didn't trigger me the same way.
Mm,
So sometimes, not having a close relationship to the parent that has been abusive is a way to do
yeah.
it. Because otherwise, how would you find who you are if you're constantly ego triggered by their
Right.
abuse? As a child, you will always come back, you will always regress back to the pattern that you know. So when you meet a parent and that parent, pokes your ego,
Mm-hmm.
you will, even though you've been in therapy and you've done a lot of work with yourself, you will always go back to the pattern, the initial
Mm,
pattern with your
mm-hmm.
parents. So you almost become a child every single time you meet with them, and they have more power over you
Mm,
because you cannot be the grown up that you are.
right.
So if you take some time off and stabilize that identity, being who you
Mm-hmm.
are, it's easier when you go back because you know who you are and you don't need to be triggered.
Right.
They will trigger you anyway, but not in a way that is violent,
Mm,
as if you do not stay away for a while. So that would be my first thing, to not be around the parent that has been abusing
mm-hmm.
you, if you're a grown up, of course.
Right. Yeah, if you have that option. Some people don't have the option.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
now when you had your son and then you had your
Mhm.
breakthrough, and you said you've
Mm.
always been a writer, correct? Like,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
how did you come about writing the book, Know the Truth?
Yeah. Well, being a writer, not in a sense that I wrote a lot of stuff, but I knew that I had a book within
Mm-hmm.
me. I knew that there was a book that needed to be um, expressed in this
Right.
world. And since I have an academic background, I have a master's degree in art,
Okay.
and I've studied a lot of psychology and media and communication. So there is a certain way of writing when you come from the academic
Mm-hmm.
world. You are always peer reviewed. They're always looking at what is it that you're writing and how are you expressing yourself. So some people might say, well, that's power. That's a good thing because then you can
Mm-hmm.
write. For me, it was crippling
Mm.
because I wanted to write for people who are in distress to be able to read it. Now, who sits down and reads an academic book when they're in distress? They
Nobody.
don't. Nobody.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to understand that I didn't need to write the book in an academic way. I
Mm.
needed to
Mm-hmm.
write the book that from my heart space, not my head
Right.
space. So there was a lot of fear. I tried a couple of times, but I didn't feel comfortable with it. And then my mother got sick, and she was actually so sick that she almost died. She was at the hospital, and this was going on for weeks, back and forth,
Mm.
back and forth. And I was in a tired, distressed mode. And we were sitting in our garden, and I was talking to my husband about the things that I felt about this reality. And he said, why are you not writing this down?
Mm.
you know what? Let's start a Twitter account and you can put out the thoughts out there.
Nice.
The thoughts exactly the way that you are formulating them in your head, not allowing them to, go through this academic stuff going on in your head,
Right.
allowing them to come out the way they are originally. And I'm thinking 140 characters because this was in 2013.
Right.
How am I supposed to express these thoughts in 140 characters?
Right.
So I tried anyway. And this blew my mind because what happened was that I needed to distill really important, big thoughts into 140 characters without making them seem simple and stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be a thing that I really love to do and a thing that I'm really good at.
Nice.
So it just exploded. I just started putting out thoughts out there. And I did this for a couple of years. I think somewhere around 2015, my husband came and he had a page with text like this. And he said, read this. So I started reading and I'm thinking, well, these are my words. When did I write this? The entire page. When did I write this? And he said, you didn't. These are tweets and there's weeks between the tweets. And yet when you put them together, they form a text which is coherent and you can read it. And I'm like, I've written my book and it's out there already.
That's so cool.
So I just pulled in all the tweets and then started to make some kind of order to make it look like the text that I wanted it to be. I'm putting some more of it there, and it took me 6 months or something like that. And I had almost written an entire book. I realized that I had bypassed my fear and my ego by putting out stuff in small chunks. So it didn't, to my mind, it didn't look like I was writing a book. It looked like I was tweeting.
Yeah.
I was doing some tweets here and there.
Right.
And I was actually writing a book in that way. So it became very organic and it became very intuitive. And this is why you can read my book back and there it is. You can read my book back and forth. You can start wherever you want.
Right.
You can do whatever you want with it because it's written in a way where it has no start and no end. It's ongoing. It's like an oracle.
I love that.
And I love the idea.
How brilliant is that?
Yes, it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful vibe in it when you can do something like that. What it showed me was that I need to trust myself. I need to trust my intuition. I cannot look at everyone else and say everybody is writing this way.
Right.
Set a time, 2 hours every day, write 1.5 page. Didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I had to do it in a different way. And it still doesn't work for me. So I'm writing all the time and almost never. I'm using everything. I'm using my iPad. I write on walls at home if I have an idea, and then I pick it up and put it down into my iPad. So I have no rules of how to write. The important thing is to formulate my thoughts into words and put them somewhere. And then when I'm ready, I gather everything and put it down and it becomes a book.
I think that's so amazing because if you look at it, that's how we're trained, right? Like I think I almost failed English in college like twice because of that, because the formality of having to write in a structured way never appealed to me either. I was like, I just want to write what I'm thinking and have it come out sounding like I'm thinking. So like you said, the whole let's sit aside and do, that's so traditional, and I've never been one to do that either. It's like I'll go through years or months without writing anything and then just sit down and blah blah blah, blah and it all comes out. Or like you said, maybe in a tweet or something like that. But that's brilliant. You wrote a book and you didn't even know. And kudos to your hubby because he was the catalyst for that. So that's so cool.
Yeah. He's very often a catalyst for me because sometimes I can't see things that I've done because they're like a second nature to me, and he's on the outside and he can see it. So he helps me with this. And by the way, we've been together for 36 years and I cannot fathom this. It's really, really cool to be able to see a human being shift. It's almost like different men only it's in one and the
That's
same
really
man.
cool.
Seeing him going from this awesome young human artistic being into maturing, becoming wise, and knowing how to stop his ego from driving
Yeah.
him, standing still in his soul, pulling back, actually expressing very healthy
Mm-hmm.
masculinity to balance our
Right.
relationship. So it's so beautiful to be able to see it. I'm not saying that it has been light all the time, because it's a roller coaster always,
Right.
but there has always been love,
Mm.
and that is important.
Yes.
You know, love beyond time and space. That's how it feels, and that's why it allows us to evolve together the way we do.
And I would say it's probably because you actually like each other too, right? Because that's what I've seen when
Yes.
I've seen couples. Because in
Yes.
some of the other work that I've told you I do, I see
Mm,
couples and I'm like, some of them, they don't even like each other. And if you're doing that in front of me, what
mm.
are you doing when I'm not around? You know what I mean? And the ones
Yeah.
that actually
Yeah.
I saw that were very few, maybe less than five,
Mm,
that actually
mm,
liked each other, the love was so
mm-hmm,
present, just in the way they were so
mm-hmm,
loving, and the way they talked to each other, and the way he would look at
mm-hmm.
her, and just all of
Yes.
it, you could
Yes.
just see it was so genuine. And
Mm,
then you could also see where it was just they'd lost that somewhere, or maybe they never had it, and
mm,
then it was just like, you're a
mm,
bother, you're just annoying to me, I
mm,
can't wait till we get done with this so I don't
mm,
have to sit here and be talking to you anymore. And I'm
mm-hmm.
just like, oh my
Yeah.
god, that's
Yeah.
so awful. So that's such a blessing that you have that. I mean, yeah, because they don't build them
Yes.
like that anymore
Absolutely.
for some people.
No, I know. I know. It's a question of giving each other
Mm-hmm.
space. I remember in my 20s when I was in this victim mode, I was thinking that he had to be a mind reader
Mm,
because he was supposed to know what I
right.
needed. How can you do that? This is impossible. You can't do
Yeah.
that. Also, I think that taking care of your own
Mm-hmm.
happiness in a relationship is the biggest gift you can give to your partner, because you release them from the responsibility of making you
Right.
happy. I think that is one of the things that maybe ruins a lot of
Mm-hmm.
relationships, when you put the responsibility on the other to make you
Right.
happy, to be the mind reader of what you want in your life. This is where the healthy boundaries are set.
Mm,
When you say, you know what, this is what I like, without the anger, without the blaming and, guilt tripping, just stating, this is how I would like it to
right.
be. And keeping it in a conversational mode where you do not kill the
Mm,
magic, but you actually show and say what you want, because no one is a mind
right.
reader. You need to articulate it in the most loving way so that the other one can meet you
Right.
there. And that's a hard thing to do, but with practice, you get good at
Yes, and you have to have
it.
somebody that's willing to do that with you too, because you have some people that are
Yes,
just they
yes,
like your father, for example, and my father. It's like, no,
yes,
this is the way it's
yeah.
supposed to be. You don't like it, there's
Mm-hmm,
the door, or my way or the highway. So when you have
mm-hmm,
somebody who's
mm-hmm.
not even willing to, in a sense, it's almost like a little dance, right? The man, if
Yes.
you look at it biblically, yes, the husband is called to love the wife, because God knows
Mm-hmm,
that what women need to be loved, and that way they
mm-hmm,
can do anything for you, right? If they feel loved and
mm-hmm,
cared for, then they can trust
mm-hmm,
that they can submit
mm-hmm,
themselves to you, and not in a like whatever way, but a way to
mm-hmm.
be honor your position as a husband. And then when the
Yes.
husband does that, when he, as the leadership, right, does that
Mm-hmm.
first, almost it's like he
Mm-hmm.
submits himself to his wife in a sense, not like making himself
Mm-hmm.
lower than her, but he gives her that love that
Mm-hmm.
she needs to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gives him the
Yes.
respect and everything else that he needs to feel,
Mm-hmm.
supported in that way. And I feel like so many
Mm-hmm.
people just don't understand that process, because the man feels
Mm-hmm.
like he's supposed to be given something first before he can do whatever. And then the woman's like, no,
Yeah.
like intuitively, she knows that
Mm-hmm.
that man is not ready, or he's just not the right
Mm-hmm.
man to be able to do that for, because it'll always be that way of him constantly trying to dominate and control her. And that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make it, it's not happy for anybody, and it's not a good, um let's say, like it doesn't work for the kids either, because now there's always this conflict and control going back and forth, and then the kids are like,
Mm.
it just always feels
Mm-hmm.
unbalanced and unsafe,
Mm.
and you don't want to foster
Mm.
that kind of environment. So
Absolutely, because what happens here is that love becomes transactional. If you
mm-hmm.
give me this, I'll give you
Right,
that. And love can never be transactional. Love has to be the foundation,
right.
and then you act in that foundation. What happens when we are not finished with our past, when
Mm-hmm.
we come into a relationship where we bring the past with us, usually when we come from abusive families, we are operating on a fear based perspective. Everything that is filtered through fear will come out as toxic.
Mm-hmm.
So we can use the word protection, for instance. If you come from a place of fear, then protection, which is, by the way, a masculine
Right.
energy going through both men and women. When we talk about masculine and feminine energies, it's about two energies that are present in every man and every
Mm-hmm.
woman. And it's like a dance between the two. So if protection, a healthy masculine energy is about
Mm-hmm.
clarity, calmness,
Mm-hmm.
protection, and
Mm-hmm.
direction. If protection is filtered through a fearful perspective, a man who is not ready with
Mm-hmm.
himself, who comes from a fearful perspective, protection becomes control.
Mm.
If it comes from a place where the man is ready, where he actually expresses the masculine energy in a positive way, in a
Mm-hmm.
healthy way, it becomes support.
Right.
One and the same word, pro- projected through fear or through love,
Mm.
becomes two different
Mm-hmm.
things. So, this is why I say our parents did not know how to go into their own mind, into their own consciousness, and cleanse themselves from all the past stuff. And they bring fear into this reality. They filter everything through fear, which becomes the negative side of the masculine and the feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
The feminine energy, the negative side of the feminine energy would, or the positive side of the feminine energy is nourishment, presence,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
intuition. And I'm not using love here because love is the basis for all of this. When we're operating from love, these two energies, the feminine becomes divine and the masculine becomes protective and present.
Mm.
And so it becomes a beautiful world to live
Right.
in. But if it is filtered through fear, it becomes toxic masculinity, which will be abusive, dominant, craving, wanting.
Mm.
The feminine energy will be like gossiping or manipulating or victimhood.
Mm. Wow.
And it's the filter is fear in both of these cases. It would be, if it is filtered through fear, that is what it will express itself
Mm.
as. Now, if you look at our society, I mean, we live in a fear based
Yeah.
society. So, of course, our egos are triggered, and everything we explore in this reality will be filtered through the
Right.
fear. So it becomes toxic. We talk about the toxic masculinity in our society. Yes, it's toxic, but we don't need more feminine energy in that. We need healthy masculine
Mm.
energy in that,
Mm-hmm.
to shift it, to start looking at it from a love-based perspective.
Ooh.
And it's the same thing in a relationship. When you help each other ease the
Mm-hmm.
fear, you tap into your highest self, which will express itself through love.
Mm.
And you don't need to do much. You just need to understand that there is nothing to fear. If I give, I will give because I want to give, and then I don't lose
Mm-hmm.
anything. If it comes from fear, it would say, I will give, but I want that back because I'm afraid that I won't have
Right.
enough.
Or lose something.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Lose myself.
So now I can see when I look at my own relationship with my husband that as soon as we became wise, which is around the time when my son was
Mm-hmm.
born, when we became wise, he made us wise because we realized that we need to be authentic, that we need to bring love into the
Mm-hmm.
situation. We can't let our egos drive us through fear because he will be swimming in that fear,
Mm-hmm.
our son.
Right. Yeah.
So we didn't talk about it. It just happened.
Mm.
We shifted. We started creating a more love-based perspective within each and every, within each, within each other.
Yeah.
My tongue is not working anymore.
Well, that's a beautiful dance.
Yeah,
And so I
it
just got one
is.
more question for you
Yeah.
because I know we
Yes.
could talk all day.
Yeah, I know. We do
We do
that.
that every time.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
when you wrote the book, when did
Mhm.
Oprah come into this situation? Was it, did she reach out and you became one of her soul teachers, or how did all of that magic happen?
I didn't have my book when Oprah
Oh,
found me.
nice.
I was tweeting.
Ah,
Yes,
she
I
found
was
you when you were tweeting.
tweeting.
So there's a thing for
Yes,
everybody. Oprah might
yes.
find you
It
when
was
you're
just
tweeting.
a thing where they asked me if I wanted to dream a little, and I answered, yes, I do. And then before I knew it, I was in LA and I was
Hmm.
one of the Super Soul 100 teachers. And I mean, I did not realize what that was until I started, scrolling and looking who are the people that are Super Soul 100. And they are amazing
Mm-hmm.
people. I mean, it's Tony Robbins, Marianne Williamson, Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I realized that I was the only one from Europe, and I was like, oh my God, this is like getting the Nobel Prize in self help. So it was beautiful. It happened through Twitter,
That's so
actually. So
cool.
tweet, tweet, tweet. That
Yeah,
was.
that's amazing. Right.
Mm.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So anything we need to know about what upcoming projects, oh, and how can people get in touch with you if they want to be
Yes,
coached
I
by
mean,
you? Like,
I'm
just give us
always
all
on
the
Twitter. So
details.
my handle is at my power talk, and I'm always putting out new stuff there. So if you want to know what's going on in my head, that is the place to go. Also, I do one-on-one, so you can contact me via DM, or you can write to me at info@mypowertalk.com, and I will look at it there. The project,
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Instagram and I am on Facebook, and it's my power talk. My handle is my power talk everywhere. Or if you just write Gordana Biernat, it will just pop out in
Okay.
Google. You will find all the things you need. My next project is I am writing another book, and it is writing itself in the same way as I usually do.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of things that I am
Yay!
exploring organically right now, and it's very much about the negative and the positive side of ego. It is a lot about the masculine and feminine
Mm,
energy and how they are playing with each other. It's about fear and how to jump out of that fear, how to realize that we don't need to live in that fear. So that is where I'm dwelling at the moment, and it is taking a form without me knowing exactly what the end result will be. The other thing is that I have been doing a
right.
course in going back into your memories and looking at them without the emotional stuff, also connecting to the child from within and bringing that child within
Mm,
you so that you will feel one with the child, so the child won't be alone anymore within you, so that
mm,
finding your power in a way by going back into the past so that you can project a different future in front of you. So that's a project that is going to be launched very, very
mm.
soon. um, and I think that's it for
Okay.
now. Yeah, I know, it is
Oh,
that's
well,
it for
that's a
now.
lot.
Yeah.
A- and I thoroughly enjoyed working with you. I know
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
know.
be hopping on that again because yeah, you helped so much that was going on in my personal life, different aspects. That was the cool thing. I could come to you and say,
Yeah.
okay, this is what I'm struggling with right now. Let's hone in on this, and then something else would happen, and it's like, okay, this is like the house is on fire.
Yes.
We need to go over here and put this fire out now. And you were
Mm.
so just fluid in helping me navigate through all of that, and just so peaceful. And
No,
not that
no,
I would,
absolutely
I was
not.
running
But
around and my
I
hair
think
was
what
on
you're
fire or anything,
describing is
but
actually the process through which I do one-on-one. Synchronicity is a really big thing for me. We
mm-hmm,
allow synchronicity to guide us
mm-hmm,
while we are doing the talk, and it always gives you exactly what you need in the now moment. Also, what is beautiful with
right,
you and all my clients is that you know that you create your own reality. And you also know that you're responsible for everything that is
mm-hmm,
in your reality right now. You're not responsible for what happened to you as a child, but you are
right,
responsible for how you deal with it in the now
mm-hmm,
moment. And I help you look at it
mm-hmm,
like, mirror something back to you, guide you somewhere, hold your hand, be there with you. That is what we do. And it has to be organic, and it has to be in a synchronistic flow of
yeah,
what you need. And you know what? When you start talking, you always come back to what you actually do need to talk about. And this is why it always feels right when you sit down
mm-hmm,
and allow synchronicity
yeah,
to guide you. It helps you to focus on the right stuff, the stuff that you actually need to focus on in the now moment. So that is, and I do love our
yeah.
sessions. We always have loads of fun in them. Yes, we do.
Yeah, we always go down the rabbit hole for sure.
Always
But
with a
we come out
greater
at the end,
yeah,
though.
with a
That's what
greater
I love about it.
consciousness we come
We
out
go
of it.
play.
Yes, always. Yes.
Yes, we go play in the dark, and where it's, what is it? I always like to liken it to Game of Thrones. It's dark and full of terrors
Yes.
down there,
Yes.
but we always come back out.
Mm.
Okay, sunshine's
Exactly.
here. We're good.
Exactly.
It's all good. Gotta kind of roll
Yeah.
around in the muck for a little bit
Absolutely.
and then come out of it. So yeah,
Mm.
I'm really appreciative and grateful for you, and yeah,
Yes.
looking forward to having those conversations again soon. Thanks so much for
Mm.
talking to me today. This has been wonderful, and I definitely want everybody to reach out to you and follow you and read your book, and
Yes, on
they
Amazon,
can get it on Amazon,
all
right?
online bookstores, you can find it there. Yes. Yes, all of them. Yes.
Yes, Barnes and Nobles, all of
Yay,
that.
we
Yeah.
did it. Thank you.
Yay! So thanks so much for joining
Yes.
me. I'm gonna stop our talk now, and then
Yes,
so we won't be down the rabbit hole some more.
absolutely.
But yeah, maybe we'll do this
Kara,
again
always
because
for
there's
you.
always
Thank
more
you
to
so
talk
much for
about.
having me on your podcast today. Yay!
I'm so happy that you were my first guest. Like,
Initiation.
it just made
Yes.
sense to make you the first one. Yes. All right. So I'm gonna stop us now, and we will talk again soon.